All right, folks, welcome to the Inside Our Lives Matter web chat. I'm going to ask all my panelists to mute themselves real quickly so we can introduce the web chat. Everybody can go on mute. Thanks. My name is Scott Roberts. I am Senior Campaign Manager at Advancement Project and an organizer with Freedom Side. Freedom Side is a national network of youth of color organizers and organizations coming together with the understanding that the struggles of youth of color in our different communities and different movements are all deeply connected, and that the true path to victory and change is in working together. We are currently this summer commemorating the 50th anniversary of Freedom Summer, trying to do work in the spirit of that project, and we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the latter part of this web chat. But we are focused in 4 distinct issue areas that we do see as having overlapping effects on our communities, and those are criminalization, economic justice and jobs, democracy and voting rights, and education. In this particular web chat, we're going to focus deeply on the issue of criminalization. There are really 2 timely moments for us to talk about here. I'm going to deal with those and as well as broader issues. Those being today being the 1-year anniversary of the verdict in the George Zimmerman trial, where the murderer of Trayvon Martin was allowed to go free. The other is the issue that has captured the attention of our country right now, is refugee youth are crossing over the border to join, have been crossing over the border, and we have seen the debate and argument over what we can and cannot do for those young people, and we've seen our president calling for their deportation. We're going to deal with those issues and others, and we apologize for the technical difficulties in getting started late, but we thank all of you all who are joining us out there on the internet, and we were not going to belabor things much. I'm going to do quick introductions of folks so we can begin this conversation. I do want to plug a couple things before I do that. One is this. If you're following this web chat and you're on Twitter and you want to engage in the conversation, you can use the hashtag #OurLivesMatter. Again, that's #OurLivesMatter. Towards the end of the web chat, we're hoping to take questions from Twitter. So feel free at any time to post your question for this panel of youth of color organizers using the hashtag #OurLivesMatter. You can also follow Freedom Side at Freedom Side, and check out our website, freedomside.org. So I'll quickly do a round of introductions, and then we'll begin. We have with us 7 amazing youth of color organizers. First, we have Dante Berry, Deputy Director of Million Hoodies Movement for Justice. Enchanta Jackson of the Black Youth Project 100. Kirin, Kanakkanatt, National Field Coordinator for GetEQUAL. Malaya Davis, organizer with the Ohio Student Association. Mateo Tabares, youth organizer with Make the Road New York. Phillip Agnew, executive director of Dream Defenders, and we'll also be joined by Edna Monroy, who is with the California Immigrant Youth Justice Alliance. All right, we want to begin with the anniversary of the George Zimmerman verdict, and really with the Trayvon Martin tragedy in general. I want to take the first question to Phil Agnew of Dream Defenders. Phil, the Dream Defenders took probably the most drastic and sustained action of all the work that happened around the country following the verdict. Can you explain a little bit about how you all felt in Florida in the wake of the verdict, why you all took the action that you did, and just explain to folks who may not know what that work was?
Yeah, so as you explained already, and most folks know, the Dream Defenders were founded after Trayvon was murdered, and so we were waiting, just like everybody else around the country, for the verdict. I remember specifically me and Ahmad being in our living room. Ahmad is our legal and policy director, and we had just watched as the jury had come back and asked for some more clarification around the manslaughter charge. And we had gone to eat. It was late on Saturday evening. And I remember thinking that we would get a verdict on Monday and it would be guilty. And, we would be able to mobilize around potentially just the issue of criminalization and talking about why it was so wrong for him to be murdered. And so when it came out that he had been found not guilty, I vividly remember having a deep, 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 deep feeling in my stomach that it was a lump in my throat. It was a lot of anger in me. I didn't know what to do. My phone was ringing off the hook. And we decided at that moment in the next hour, hour and a half, that we were going to take our issues straight to the governor's office. We believed at that time the courts had proven that they weren't going to do anything. The police department had proven they weren't going to do anything. And so the only place for recourse for us was the governor and the legislature. And so we decided we were going to take all of our issues, all of our pain, all of our anger, our stories directly to the governor's place of business. And our demand at that time was a special session for the legislature to look over the stand your ground law, but also to address the school to prison pipeline and racial profiling in our state. We believe that those three issues directly led to the death of Trayvon Martin and to the death and the criminalization of black and brown young people, people of color, poor people around the state of Florida and around the country. And so we went directly to his office, and our claim was that we had every right to be there. As citizens in the state, we had a place and a forum for us to voice our grievances with the state. And so we weren't going to leave until we got what we wanted. And we wound up being in there for 31 days and 30 nights. And so, and it allowed us to talk about that story of criminalization. It allowed for us to show that no matter what the media was saying, a whole bunch of black and brown kids, poor people, weren't going to burn down our own neighborhoods because we didn't get what we want. And it also allowed for us to build around that narrative in our state, specifically in Florida, that we do have a very serious race problem. And that race problem is not just a soft race problem. It's a race problem that directly leads into detention, deportation, and death of young black people, young brown people, and people of color.
Thanks, Phil. We'll come back to some of the work that Dream Defenders has been doing since leaving the Capitol in a moment. I want to give another person who's on our panel, Kirin here, who traveled to Florida and joined the takeover of the Capitol. Kirin, why was it so important for you to be there?
Yeah, thanks for having me as well. So the night of the verdict, I was actually at my parents' house in the suburbs in Akron, Ohio, and I remember just like watching it happen, and then just like looking out of my window and like waiting for something to happen, like waiting for like, the quote unquote angry mobs to happen, and nothing happened. It was just like any other day. And for me, in that moment, it like really solidified that like not only that my reality was sort of rejecting this like really, really radical and horrible thing that was happening, but that I didn't even really belong there. And so, I was watching my friends in Florida, like waiting to see what they were going to do, like, on the edge of my seat, like they're totally going to lead it. We got that. Like I got your back, blah, blah, blah. And I saw them take over the Capitol, and it was like, for me, it was like, it was everything in me to not go there, right? I was just coming off of a conference, the National Student Power Convergence, and I should have gone home, but I somehow found myself buying a ticket to Florida because it was like, man, my entire family is living in a marble building that is actively rejecting them, in a state that is actively killing them. Like, what am I doing if I'm not going to go there? And just like, for me, that building was not a home. Like, they kept the lights on the whole time. They tried to kick us out with like fire alarms, you know what I mean? Like, that building was not a home. It was actively rejecting us the whole time. But the people there made it home. Like, I got there and it was like, you could feel this like pervasive, unapologetic, radical power just building. Like, even if it was like over meals or like pulling out beds or like these like organic teaching moments that happen every single day in his office, in despite of, his office secretary just like not having it at all. You know what I mean? Like, for me, going there, I couldn't not go there, you know?
Thanks, Kirin. We are, again, folks, on the hashtag on Twitter, Our Lives Matter. Folks are responding to some of these questions themselves. I'm going to throw in some of them just to broaden our conversation with our family out there on Twitter. Isabel at S-R says, how I felt the day of the verdict. I wanted to die. I've spent a year asking, do our lives matter? I know that they are worth fighting for. Thanks, Isabel. I want to go now to Enchanta Jackson. Enchanta's with Black Youth Project 100. Today is the 1-year anniversary of the founding of Black Youth Project 100. Yes. Congratulations to the Black Youth Project 100. It's an amazing group of young people around the country.
Thank you.
You all founded, as we said, you all founded were founded also on this day. I know it was not an intentional thing of being timed around the trial of the verdict, but you all did put out one of the quickest and most powerful responses in your statement. Just wondering what it was like to be with the Black Youth Project 100 in that moment, and how do you feel having your formative moment coincide with this verdict has shaped the path of Black Youth Project 100 over this first year?
First, thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of the panel. Like you said, it wasn't intentional for us to convene the weekend of the verdict, but the one word the one thing when I think of why we came together during that moment was like the stars aligned, the universe spoke. It was really a God-sent moment. We were right outside of Chicago. We were convening just to meet and discuss a Black agenda. About 100 Black organizers from across the country doing various different types of organizing kind of just came together just to talk, think about some issues we're facing as a people as a whole. It was a very intense weekend before the verdict was even dropped. If you can imagine almost 100 Black intellectuals trying to come together to create a solution. It's a very intense, challenging process, a beautiful process. We just started forming relationships. Some of us knew each other. A lot of us were meeting for the first time, but we all respected each other's work, and we were really challenging each other throughout the day. The day was ending, and we were about to disperse, and literally someone ran in and yelled, turn on the TV, they're about to announce the Zimmerman verdict. As soon as that was said, everyone kind of like froze for a second. We formed a circle and we held hands. A lot of people were crying before the verdict even happened, because a lot of people had dedicated their lives to just fighting for justice for Trayvon, and really trying to engage and inform our people about what was happening, and really trying to be a support to the Martin family. So a lot of investment was made for that trial, and when the verdict dropped, we literally broke. All of our hearts broke, but our hearts broke together. So I think that us being together was a very powerful moment, because I don't know what would have happened if we weren't together. But because we were together, we were able to have that grieving moment and be angry and be hurt, but then start an action plan immediately following the verdict. We stayed up until like 3 o'clock in the morning, creating a plan. Some people went into the city of Chicago to rally and to protest, but we created 6 action items, and over the year we've been able to complete 4 of those action items. And I just really want to give a humongous shout out to Dream Defenders, because I don't think that BYP 100 would have been able to get the momentum and to get a lot of things that we've done accomplished without working so closely with them.
Thanks, Enchanta. I want to bring in Dante here. Dante, again, folks, is the Deputy Director of Million Hoodies Movement for Justice. Dante, Million Hoodies is another youth of color-led organization with its origins in the Trayvon Martin tragedy. You recently authored a powerful piece that's published at nextcity.org. Folks should go and check that out. Again, that's nextcity.org. In it, you discuss me and Hoodie's efforts to bridge the gap between the struggles to end the criminalization of young people of color and the efforts to stop gun violence. Where do you see the connection between those things, and why do you think it's so important for us to bridge the gap between those struggles?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having us all on this hangout. It's great to be with family, especially on this particular day of significance. So I authored a piece called "Remember the Zimmerman Verdict with an Evolved Approach to Gun Violence." You can find it on Next City or Color Lines or Huffington Post, and it really puts into context some of the responses to different kinds of gun violence, particularly gun violence that happens in affluent communities that leads to the continued criminalization of youth of color, from racial profiling to police misconduct, to a lot of the issues that are affecting our communities today, dealing with how we're perceived in the light of other people. And I really provide I provided in the context of being in Bed-Stuy, a neighborhood in Brooklyn that's predominantly black, also majority poor. The median income is $36,000 a year. And I live across the street from a police station, and there's cops that come out all the time, every night. They sometimes stand right up front of my apartment building. And there was recently a shooting a couple days, not too long ago, right down the street. And I think about every single day, like, what would be the response from that, and it always leads to more policing in schools. It also leads to more policies like stop and frisk, and this idea of creating a sense of safety and sense of security really feeds back into how policies in particular are criminalizing youth of color. So when I think about bridging the gap of gun violence and criminalization, I think about how are we creating, how do we reframe the narrative about what means to be safe and also what means to be secure that's more inclusive to communities of color and not isolating them or putting them in a prison type of atmosphere.
Thank you, Dante. Getting some more messages on Twitter. Folks are responding to the question of how did you feel in the wake of the Zimmerman verdict. Bina Robinson Mock wrote, the Zimmerman verdict validated the lack of regard for black life in America. It was a gut check. And before we kind of move on to what's happened since the verdict, I wanted to just give the other panelists an opportunity to weigh in on just how you were personally impacted or affected or saw your communities being impacted. Wondering if we can go to Edna right now. Edna, you work with the California Immigrant Youth Justice Alliance, working with and supporting mostly undocumented immigrants. Wondering what kind of reactions and responses you saw within that community, or even on a personal level, in the wake of the verdict.
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Edna Monroy from CJA, the California Immigrant Youth Justice Alliance. I apologize for the background. We've been running around. We had a retreat this weekend and a lot of logistics, but I'm excited and thankful to join you all today. And yes, as you mentioned, Scott, we are CJA, right? Hello, can everyone hear me, first of all? Yes?
We can hear you. You're good.
Okay. I'm talking from my phone, so just want to make sure. Okay, yeah, so first of all, CJA. So we are a statewide alliance of 12 different grassroots, immigrant youth-led, and community-based organizations throughout California, from San Diego all the way to Sonoma County. And we are pretty new. I want to say that we've been around for a year now. We kind of like joined I guess, officially a CJA last May 2013, and so we've been around for a year now, doing a lot of work around immigrant rights. So around the Trust Act, right? Working to cut back on the collaboration between ICE and local police enforcement, and just a lot of different things around stopping deportations, and also holding so-called like Democrats or like progressive leaders to have these conversations around not just, right, like providing relief, immediate relief to our families, but really having conversations around the criminalization of immigrants, of undocumented immigrants, and also like the militarization of the border, with a lot of things that are happening, currently happening, right, with families and children, right, like, you know, urging President Obama to grant them humanitarian asylum. So a lot of the work that we do is pretty much around that, just raising or having these conversations, that we need to be critical, that yes, a lot of these issues affect us as undocumented immigrants, but it's not just about like being undocumented. Yeah, once you get papers and that's it, right? Like, is that it really? Like, I think it's a much deeper conversation that as people of color, we are affected in so many different ways, right? Through our different identities, like as women, right? Myself, like being a mujer, identifying as a woman of color, and growing up here in South Central LA, seeing a lot of those shared struggles and shared experiences as people of color, and like different layers too, right? Like that you're undocumented, that you're queer, that you're a woman, that you're a woman of color, that you're working class, that English is your second language, like that you're an older immigrant versus like a younger immigrant, being from Mexico versus like from other countries, right? So I think it's much bigger. Like the question here is much bigger, right? It's not whether like it's like who's more oppressed, like us as undocumented immigrants, or like everyone else as people of color, or who deserves to be recognized, or who's more radical, or who's more vocal. So to me and to a lot of us as CJA, right, we see this as an intersectional issue that needs to be addressed, but we need to have these conversations with ourselves and see that, yeah, we're all unique and we're different and we have different experiences, but at the same time, it's the same damn institutions that, you know, deport us, that criminalizes us, that, you know, that feeds into that, it contributes into all those inequalities and those disparities that we are living, that we are facing. So yeah, that's my that's what I think.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you sharing that. I think, you know, that you really defined a lot of the reasons why we're here on this call or this web chat right now, talking about the intersectionality of all of our struggles. Want to just kind of move a little bit out on the Trayvon Martin tragedy. I think in the wake of the verdict, we saw a ton of activity around the country. In addition to the kind of sustained protests that the Dream Defenders took on, we also saw, you know, many rallies and things, a day of action organized by the National Action Network, other groups and people taking action online in the streets. I'm wondering for the panel, and this kind of open question for folks who want to jump in, how do we feel that moment has, you know, where have we gotten since that moment? Have we made any progress in addressing the issues of criminalization of young people of color? Have we, and what are the challenges that we're still facing? Again, that's an open question to anybody who wants to take it on.
Yeah. I think we've made considerable progress on the movement front. Just the sheer possibility that we could all be together and know each other and be working together in a substantive way, I think is a signal of great progress. You know, it's debatable, but, you know, Eric Holder and the president's office have said a great deal around criminalization, specifically the school to prison pipeline. But then President Obama sucks in pretty much every other area. And so there's a lot of progress that has to be made. I'll keep my answer short and just say that one, even though there's a lot of other progress being made. One thing that could potentially hold us back, I believe, is the nonprofit industrial complex that really divides up our work and forces us to divide up our work in a number of different ways. And that's something that we'll engage in discussion about for the future. But I don't think the things that will divide us or work against us will come from the people here. It'll come from these outside forces that want us to do very specific silo work, which Freedom Side and other groups have come out against and been working against.
I'll add one other thing. I'll stick really short to. The three things I think for us to move past the moment is one, building power. It's incredibly important for all of us to be building local power and even and national power to make sure that we're enhancing and getting the vision that we want to see going forward. The second is like leadership development training. I think we all now have a wide network of people that want to be doing some work. So actually providing them with the skills and resources to know how to be on full point. And then the third part, which I think is the biggest piece right now, is having a policy agenda. I think we need to really be thinking about how are we influencing and forming the policies going forward that are not necessarily just being dismantled, but also what are the alternatives to the society that we want to inherit going forward.
I totally agree with what Dante and Phil said, and just to go off that, I think one thing that I've seen with this current movement that's so beautiful to me is that we're really highlighting the different type of work people are doing. So I feel like right now it's not just that you are in field, and it's not just that you are a speaker, but now it's like, oh, you can do social media organizing, you can do fundraising. If you're good at data, you can do data, you can do this, you can do that. And it really makes it even more inclusive, right? Some people aren't speakers. Maybe they're door-to-door canvassers, but those people are just as valuable as someone who facilitates a training, as someone who's able to input data, as someone who's able to organize a phone bank, as someone who's able to train other leaders to do X, Y, and Z. I think in order for this movement to continue to happen, and in order for our momentum to stay high, we have to be more inclusive about what kind of skills we value, and like what was said before, it's intersectional. We can't divide. We have to stop dividing. People will try to divide us for us, but I'm a Black woman. I can't be on one side of the other, right? I'll be fighting myself this whole time. So yeah, I just think that that's what we really have to keep in mind when we're moving forward.
Hello everyone. Thank you for having me here in the panel. My name is Mateo. I'm a youth organizer, and when I think about the progress that we have done throughout, I think about movement building, right? Being able that through this verdict, through what happened in this case, right? We were able to connect other stories and connect and plug in other folks that identify differently, right? I feel like throughout the past year, at least here in New York City, we have seen an increase amount of like progress and like fights from the transgender community and anything that deals with police brutality, abuse of power, and kind of like connecting all the different sorry, I'm nervous, all the different struggles. And so one of the things that we were able to do throughout the past year is that last year in June, we were able to pass the Community Safety Act here in New York City that so generally it just doesn't allow police officers to like racial profile you, right, quote unquote, just because you're walking on the street at night or you're wearing a hoodie, right? So that was a great progress, at least here in New York City, but there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. But through this, we were able to plug in other folks, and that's for me the gigantic progress, because people get to share their stories, and through sharing your stories is how we create safer spaces, and the movement continues to build up. So yeah.
Sweet. Thank you, Mateo. I want to go ahead and try and pivot us to talking about some of these issues that are facing immigrant youth. Um, Today, I read a story today that I think really brought the connection to the Trayvon Martin tragedy and what's happening to the refugee youth who are coming across the border. The chair of the Homeland Security Committee in the House of Representatives was quoted as saying, and he was talking about he had visited one of the facilities, and he said that some of the older teenagers looked like a threat. That was his language, and for me immediately, my thought was, how different is his mentality really than from George Zimmerman's was, and it really brought home to me how connected our issues are, and what some of the kind of common roots of them are. At the same time, we know that this story of young people fleeing, many of them fleeing violence and instability in their home communities, coming to the United States. But at the same time, a lot of us may not really have real context for it. Edna, you talked a little bit about this already, but I'm wondering if you can help provide folks with a little bit of context, both if you're able to share any of your own personal story, and then just share with us kind of the actions that immigrant justice youth are taking in the wake of what we're seeing and the responses that we're seeing from our government.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I guess so it's been really crazy, right? It's been a few crazy and really difficult past weeks, almost months, where everything kind of just broke out, right? Contained for a little bit. Like this, what they're calling a humanitarian crisis. I mean, it is, but the way they're making it seen on TV is like worse, and we know this. Like this migration is a child for a while. Migration has been happening for a while, but the fact that now, all of a sudden, now that President Obama finally said, I do have the power to take action, like this happened, we also need to be very critical of that, as you mentioned, a lot of these kids and families and teenagers too, a lot of these families and communities, right, like there are many reasons, many of them are coming to escape poverty. A lot of them are coming to events that are lost, right? The root cause of it, really, really, like, to have an honest and, honest conversation, it was originated through a lot of the interventions of the U.S., of the U.S. and Central America and Latin America and other countries, through imperialism, to many, many different ways. And I guess, for me, one of the reasons why, and just to share a little bit about my story, like, I actually, came here when I was 12. I'm originally from Guerrero, Mexico, and one of the reasons why we came here was because my parents couldn't support my family and me, right, like, through their jobs as flower street vendors. So we used to sell flowers in the street. We were pretty much our whole life, our whole families, we're all street vendors. And so we couldn't really support ourselves through that. And so my dad came first. We reunited. And as we know, right, Mexico has one of the largest, like, backlogs, right? So in order for you to adjust, in order for you to even get a visa, like, it takes forever because of the number, right? The large number of, I guess, nationals. So we are, migrating. Mexico is pretty big compared to other countries, and it's pretty close to the border. So, but we applied. We tried anyways. We tried to apply for a visa. We're denied it because we need property. We, didn't have to do it, and trust someone, or my sister. We didn't have to do that, the tough decision of going through the desert, of like crossing through the mountains, which a lot of kids have to do that like at such young ages, and we're seeing that, right? People dying in the desert. So luckily for me, I didn't have to do that, but I did cross with someone else's documents, and I did get detained. And so for me, like kind of taking it back, and at age 12, like obviously not knowing the language, and like not knowing this country, not knowing a lot of the people, you know, and Guerrero, like it's one of the most diverse states in Mexico. It has the second largest population of Afro-Mexicans in Costa Chica, something that obviously, you know, is not spoken about. And it's not something that we made up. People always think that, oh, Afro-Mexicans, like, what is that? And then we obviously, you know, have a large population of indigenous communities and people that don't, like, Spanish is not their first language. But to me, it was like a big culture shock, you know, seeing how, like, I guess for the first time, seeing white people, I guess you can say, but how we, you know, like we as undocumented immigrants were, you know, addressed, how our needs were addressed, you know, we were questioned, how seeing we're being very conscious of a lot up here in South Central LA, you know, an inner city working class community, predominantly Black and brown, and, you know, seeing a lot of these challenges, seeing a lot of these connections, and so undocumented immigrant, and seeing all these things like made me realize that this is much bigger. And now, like, again, fast forwarding it to what's currently happening, and what's something that we as CJ are working on is we have made public demands, right? We have had press conferences. We had a press conference, I believe, 2 weeks ago or a week ago or so, where we, you know, we are urging President Obama to grant the family and children humanitarian asylum and also, right? Because we are, and they don't have the capacity to like process them, you know, for U visas or whatever they could qualify for. And so that's and there's a lot of human human rights violations too, as acknowledging that. And so we as CJA, like the decision that we have made is that, so we have 12 affiliates, and so for example the Inland Empire Immigrant Youth Coalition in Murrieta, right, like they're ground zero, where they're having like all these Minutemen, all these anti-immigrant people over there, like a lot of crazy things are going on over there. And so what they're having is, you know, donation drives, we're having town halls, we're having different things like that, and we're just supporting their efforts. But we as CJA, pretty much what we are going to be doing is that we're going to be launching pretty soon, and we just talked about that right now at the retreat, and we're going to be following up tomorrow as well, as we're going to be launching a campaign to make our demands public, to make them urgent, that now is the time that President Obama is going to take, you know, action, and also holding, like, I guess, political figures like Democrats that are saying that they're progressive, yet no one has said anything, you know, no one has, you know, come out in full support of the families and children. No one has said anything. And so pretty much like urging them that they also, as leaders, you know, as so-called progressive community leaders, they have to do something. They have to, you know, come out in full support of that community. So those are some of the things that we're doing, and supporting the efforts of our affiliates here in LA, in San Diego, and in the Inland Empire, up north, in Fresno, having vigils, having community gatherings, and having donations and food drives. You know, we know that that's urgent because they're not getting those needs met, you know, but also, like, we're also trying to see the big picture, you know, that yes, it's good to make sure that they have food, that they have, you know, the conditions are not, I mean, the fact that they're in detention center, that's already, like, we're not saying that that's a good thing, you know, but addressing that too, but also looking at the bigger picture, that they should be, the root of the cause should be addressed, and also the fact that if they go back, they're gonna die, you know, it's gonna come down to that. So just being vocal about that. So yeah.
Hi. So just, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
I just wanted to add a couple of stuff to that. And then when you were speaking, there were some moments that the internet was going off. I don't know what was happening, so there were parts that I couldn't really hear that well. Maybe you mentioned it, but so United States have these policies with neighboring countries, so with Canada and Mexico, saying that if you get caught while crossing the border, you are deported right away, and you are not going to go through a process and present yourself to a judge and see if you can apply for, as you were mentioning earlier, a U visa, an special immigrant juvenile visa, etc., which I am a result of. I was undocumented until a month ago when I was able to apply for a special immigrant juvenile visa, which is for youth under the age of 21. Those have been abandoned by at least one of their parents. So what President Obama wants to do as of now is to kind of like extend the neighboring policies from only Canada and Mexico to expand it to Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, saying that if anybody from those countries gets caught while trying to come into the United States, they're going to be right away deported without the process that is supposed to go through, right? So now we know that many youth that qualify for these special visas, for these U visas, many families, those are running away from the fear of being killed back in their countries, are going to lose that opportunity. And you know, it's really interesting because here, many of the really dangerous neighborhoods here seems like heaven for many youth like us that have come from really violent areas. And the fact that the president and the many other people who are trying to fight against these youth coming into the country, they don't understand what type of level of violence is back in our countries. I forgot. I was going to mention something else. I forgot it. Oh, and the UN has said in the past that the incarceration of kids, it's completely illegal and it can only be done to extremes. But what happened in the detention centers, like for example in Arizona, youth, kids, those are like on the sun, 100 and something degrees outside, burning just a couple of water, and that's it. They are being not only incarcerated but mistreated, and they're being traumatized, and then they're gonna be sent back to deal with more violence. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. I want to thank Mateo and Edna, especially for sharing your personal stories of being undocumented and the struggles that have accompanied those, and also for all the work that you're doing on behalf of young people and with young people. You know, I wanted to kind of draw a little bit more into the connection between these two issues that we're talking about. You know, the kind of violence that Dante talks about in his piece, about the violence that's often inflicted on youth of color, especially Black youth, and what we're seeing now with these immigrant youth. Last week, The Root, which is a website, as a publication of the Washington Post aimed at African American audiences, they ran a piece by Kelly Goff, which then the Miami Herald also picked up. And Kelly Goff, you know, she made this argument that we can't afford to support the refugee youth coming across the border right now because we have too many issues affecting African American youth in the United States. Her primary example was of the violence in Chicago. Phil, I want to go to you first. You're from Chicago. What's your what's your response to, and what do you think about that argument that we're competing over limited resources, and the struggles of African American youth need to take precedence?
So the first thing that I think is important to note is what Kelly's editorial did is page 1 in the Imperialist Capitalism Handbook. So it says that it's all about politics of scarcity. It says that there's only so much here, and these outsiders from another place are coming to take this very little sliver that all of you poor people have. And so it's what they've used all the time to divide up our communities. They say that, listen, Black people at the bottom, there's another population of people coming to take the crumbs off of the table that we left for you. So Kelly is doing and saying the same thing that people have said for hundreds and hundreds of years, to breed xenophobia, to breed hate, and to make sure that capitalist interests from those at the top always succeed. Second of all, it's very convenient that now someone wants to talk about Chicago and the violence of Chicago, and pick up that community, the community that I come from, as a pawn to maneuver now in this time of kind of a political ping pong where people are involved, which we always see. So it's predictable. We wrote an op-ed that should be coming out last week that kind of lays out the truth behind the issues. But I think that's another thing. We can't operate from this politics of scarcity that is perpetuated by people that live in abundance. They have plenty. Our country has much, but we use it and we prioritize it in spreading imperialism, hate, and war across the world. We see the same thing happening in Palestine now. We can draw parallels to what's happening to that country, to what's happening at our border, to what's happening in Chicago. We are all prisoners of the same war. The war on drugs, the war on the poor, the war on youth, the war on black and brown people, the war on the oppressed. We are all prisoners of the same war. And so we can't cut up these things and say they're different issues. So Kelly was way off. The root was way off for putting it out there. But it's her piece. It's her opinion. And I think this week she's going to get a little pushback from that.
All right, not sure if any of the other panelists want to weigh in on that piece. So just quickly, again, want to remind folks, if you do, just go ahead and take yourselves off of mute. We'll come to you in a second. But just want to remind folks that you can join the conversation on Twitter, hashtag Our Lives Matter. And seeing a few more tweets, I want to read a couple tweets from one of our followers, the sister Ashantia Oso, saying the Obama administration is bending to political hysteria in denying Central American youth refugee status. And she says, Black lives matter, Palestinian lives matter, migrant lives matter. Thank you, sister. All right. Cool. Is there any other responses just on that article? We could continue digging on these intersections.
Hey.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, can I have in? So I just wanted to pick out one thing that the author says specifically. They talk about like political capital and how Obama has used so much of it, like appeasing gay Americans, specifically around same-sex marriage, and like that narrative is so deeply insulting. Like that's just straight insulting, especially when you think about like queer young people, because queer young people of color specifically get left out of both movements, or at least get told to stand in the back of both movements, but they're impacted by issues from both movements. And so to have the argument that like, oh, we've used all this political capital making sure that these gays can marry, just like completely negate like the entire thing that she's talking about, criminalization and immigration and all these different things, to hold marriage in front of it and be like, well, gays, you got your turn in the sun, is not okay. I mean, our lives matter, our entire lives matter. It's not just wedding equality. We want marriage equality. With marriage comes jobs, comes healthcare, comes the right for our partners who come from different countries not to get deported, comes trans amenities, comes, comprehensive HIV. I can go on, but that, like, to put that in there and sort of be like, oh, I talked to you too, like first of all, that's not an acceptable political calculation, and second of all, it's just a not true narrative.
Thanks, Kirin.
And I feel like...
Yeah, go ahead, Edna. Oh, I'm sorry, Mateo.
And I just feel like every time that narrative is implemented, like, oh yeah, I'm an ally, I support you, because I know a gay person, we're fine, we're friends, and anything, and some things like that. I just feel like for every step we take forward, we are being pushed back 10 steps behind, which is what is really upsetting, right? And then, sorry, I forgot my point. Snaps. All right, I'll come back. Sorry. Nervous.
You got it though.
You did it. But you know what? Don't even worry about it. We're gonna we'll come back to you. Looks like Enchanta, we trying to jump in? I think Edna was as well. Go ahead.
No, I wasn't. Go ahead, Edna.
Okay.
Hi everyone. I keep moving, right? Migration is beautiful. So,
So beautiful.
so so I'm finally set up, right? Finally. Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. And snaps to you all because because that's it, like it's always about that, and then kind of going back, to when I first got involved in social justice, and to me it's about social justice. It's not even about immigrant rights. Like, it's part of that, but when I first got involved, it wasn't because I was undocumented. Yes, that was it, that was back in my head. But one of the main reasons why I got involved was because my high school, a lot of the students, we were in recorded classes, like a lot of issues, a lot of policing, a lot of that stuff was happening. But at the end of the day, we were not gonna graduate because our high school wasn't accredited. Like, to a lot of us, it was that, like, getting to home from school safe, not getting shot at, not getting harassed, like, not like all these issues. To me, like, in high school was a priority. And then when I realized that I was undocumented, I'm like, hey, what about this? And so learning from, like, the battle that we had in 2010 with the California, not the California, that too, but the Federal Dream Act, where back then it was more strategic, right? Like, to have that, and then CIR, so Comprehensive Immigration Reform, was kind of put to the side because at that time, the Dream Act, the Federal Dream Act, made sense. It was strategic. Oh, trust me, we got a lot of backlash, Oh, y'all dreamers. And that's when, like, became like popular. Now we're, like, moving past that, at least for me. People are like, yeah, like, dreamers are selfish. What do you mean? What about your parents? Like, at that time, like, acknowledging that at that time, like, it made sense. Maybe it wasn't the best move, but we got that. And then 2 years later, through that time, we strategized, and then we got that guy because we fought for that. It wasn't because President Obama felt good that day and he said, let me do something good for these people, but because we fought damn hard to get that. So it's not about that. Like, now that we have DACA, like, oh, are we supposed to shut up and sit down? Like, it's not about that, and a lot of people, like, don't get that now that we're good in the sense that we're not gonna get deported as youth, that we have a work permit, that now in Arizona people can drive, like here in California we have the Trust Act. Like, it's beyond that, and they always do that. They always try to do that to silence us, like, oh, you are good, so shut up. It's about, like, other people that also need resources. And so here is the same thing, like, yeah, let's take care of these people that have lived here and, like, put to the side, like, immigrants that are barely coming. But it's not even about that. It's about the root cause. Because if we were, and we need to, right, like, to give these migrant families and children, like, asylum, because they're not going back. If they're going back, they're gonna get killed. They're gonna die, and that's like 100% guaranteed. Based on their testimonies, based on their experiences. And so it's like, but what's making them come over here? Like, addressing NAFTA, addressing CAFTA, addressing a lot of the maquiladoras that are here in Mexico, like in Mexico, right? Like, women, mostly women, are getting killed. It's a femicide, but nobody's talking about that. Talking about guns that are being shipped to Mexico and Central America, like all 7 countries in Central America. Nobody's talking about that, and so people are like, yeah, let's just give him this. But that's just a band-aid, that's just a band-aid to a lot of the issues that are in our communities, in our different communities. Because to me, it's like, here in South Central, we have the same issues, whether you're black or brown. Like, you're gonna get pulled over while driving, you're gonna get harassed as a woman of color, whether you're black or brown, right? But it's the same, so yeah, that just kind of, like, makes me a little frustrated, because at times we're so fully invested in what we do that we don't see, like, how we can connect with other people and other movements. What's happening in the Middle East, in Palestine, like, it's not something that just happened out of nowhere. It's been going on for a while. The media doesn't want us to see that. Like, our schools are not telling us to have these critical conversations. There aren't spaces where we can challenge each other and push each other to think outside our comfort box, but I think that's what we need to do more of.
I wanted to add something because it came back to me. So when I was reading this piece, I was thinking about privilege, right? And how like the policies that Kelly was mentioning throughout the piece have been policies that have supported or given a hand to people who already have privilege, right? So like, for example, gay marriage, right? So gay marriage is not the only issue that LGBTQ folks go through, right? But those who are thinking only about marriage, those are white males, those are dominating the industry or whatever it is, they are going to have the opportunity. A person who doesn't, per se, right? A person of color who's trying to marry another person who is his partner or her partner that is undocumented, and if they are a working family, it is more difficult to find enough proof to show that they are in love, right? Because you have to show that you are in love with the person in order to obtain your documents while getting married, right? And like, how did you get all those documents, right? You have to like do the like the entire party and whatever. So people who don't have that money, right, working families won't be able to even access that support, right? So it's all these type of like scale of privilege and how much it is given, right? So when we talk about deferred action for childhood arrivals, how about those undocumented youth, those because they were driving and their tail lights was broken, they got a ticket and that became a misdemeanor in their state. They weren't able to apply for deferred action, right? So it's like only those undocumented youth, those were like will behave or whatever they want to call them, were the ones those were able to access this policy, right? So it's all these levels of privileges that she's mentioning, right? And then I was going to mention that the last part of this is, but the fact is, if we are complicit in allowing thousands of additional children to follow them here and remain here, soon we will not be able to provide any resources for dreamers or any other American children, and that will be irresponsible and un-American. Let's talk about being un-American. How about the school-to-prison pipeline? That's un-American. How about the industrial prison complex? That's un-American. And you know why we're not able to support other dreamers coming from other country? Because you are incarcerating our people. Because people of color are ending up in jails. They are not going to have a job at the end when they come out of those jails. And that really shows kind of like, I lost it. Well, taxes are not going to be as high as if you support us and you send us through college and we're able to graduate and obtain our masters and really lead our community how we are supposed to. So if we are not able to support other dreamers coming from other countries, it's because the laws in this country are already broken. It's because we are already incarcerating our people, the people who will be the ones supporting us through the future. So, yeah.
Yo, that was amazing.
Yeah. Turn up.
Damn.
Right.
All right.
So
Well,
I
okay.
believe that we will win. So
Sweet.
I believe that we will win.
I've got caught up. I forgot where I am in my notes. Hold on. I actually wanted to come back to that piece. Both Kirin and Mateo brought up issues facing queer youth of color. And I wanted to first give some just recognition and shout out to Kirin, who has been amongst a few of the leaders within the Freedom Side Network who've really pushed us to make sure we're putting a queer lens on the work that we're doing. And Kirin, I wanted to give you an opportunity just to talk about, as we talk about how to move, as we pivot these last 10 minutes or so into how we move forward in both bridging the divides between our communities and our struggles and in ending the criminalization of youth of color. In particular, how does criminalization play out for queer youth of color?
yeah, definitely. So first, thanks for the shout out for putting the queer lens on it, but I want to be really clear that it was not just me. Like, I have had so much support, both within like queer folks within the collective. I think that the queer folks that we have in the collective have really pushed me to sharpen my lens and my understanding, and to sort of come out of this like victim place and be like, no, these folks want to be our friends. And then I also want to shout out all the folks who are allies. So I think oftentimes people look at queer people and are like, yo, you need to come out of the closet, but within this work, we actually need allies to come out of the closet. And the folks within the Freedom Side Collective not only came out of the closet as allies, but weren't just satisfied with allyship, and really, really, really pushed me and pushed the rest of the queer folks to think about how we could be comrades and how we could like really think about our front lines really lining up, which is like so humbling and like for me incredibly liberating. So anyway, so that being said, so thank you very much. And as far as thinking about queer youth of color, I unambiguously want to hand this time back to Mateo after I say these few things, because killing it. But I think when we think about the criminalization of youth of color, as I said, or queer youth of color, as I said, queer youth of color are oftentimes left behind in both movements, whether it's a queer movement or whether it's the anti-racism movement or the criminalization movement or people of color movements. They're often told that their issues are divisive on either side, but yet they're getting targeted and oppressed on either sides of both issues. So it's like, it's a lose-lose all the way around. And if we're thinking about the criminalization of youth of color, oftentimes we're seeing these folks being criminalized out of survival crimes because most queer youth of color are criminalized through things that they're doing to survive, whether it's they're homeless or whether they're defending themselves against bullies or just outright violence, or if they're just doing things as simple as using the bathroom that aligns with their chosen gender identity. And across the country, we don't have these protections. What's interesting about the things that push these queer youth of color to these survival crimes is the same moral justification that we're seeing behind these religious exemption laws. So we're seeing religious exemptions. We saw it in Mississippi, right? They passed a law that actually was enacted on July 1st, so like not that long ago, that says that private business owners can discriminate based on the gender identity or sexual orientation of people. So we're seeing literally like establishments like restaurants and stuff kicking people out for holding hands with your partner, which is like, that's bullshit. Like that's not acceptable. Sorry, curse. And I think it's really important to remember that like these moral justifications are like, they're government sanctioned violence, right? Like they're literally justifying that these people, like certain people, don't deserve protection. They don't deserve safety. They don't deserve to just eat food or like use the restroom that they find safe. And so for me, it's really important to remember. So like in Massachusetts, they have marriage equality and they have the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, but if the religious exemption goes through at a national level with like if the president signs the Employment Non-Discrimination EO, that'll roll back those protections. So queer folks in Massachusetts will have actually lost the battle and will have actually had to go like had their liberation taken away by government sanctioned violence. And then I also want to note that this year we've seen a 30% increase in violence against queer people, specifically queer people of color. So we can talk about marriage equality all you want. We can celebrate all these states getting marriage equality, and don't get it twisted. I think that is a good thing, and I think that is a step in the right direction. But it's barely a step. It's mostly us just looking in one direction. So I mean, I think that we're seeing in a lot of states like people can get married, but they're still getting the shit beat out of them. They're still losing their jobs when they get home from their honeymoons. With that, I would like to open the floor.
Cool. Thanks, Kirin. Man, I hate to say this, but unfortunately, we're coming up on 8 o'clock, and we got to end this fantastic discussion. I feel like I really want to do this again, so hopefully we'll organize some more of these. I do want to give everybody a chance to kind of send us off. So just my general question to folks is, and if you can be brief about this, that would be really appreciated. But let us know how folks can support the work that you're doing, give folks the ways to plug in, so how to reach you on social media, you and your organization, how to find you online, any action steps right now that folks should be taking, and if any other kind of closing remarks you want to give, and we'll just go from left to right by the order that folks are on my screen. So I don't know what other people are seeing, but I'm the moderator. Dante, can you go first, please?
Yeah, so hi everyone again. Quick step. First is take a look at my article. You can find it again on either on Next City or Color Lines or Huffington Post. It's called "Remember the Zimmerman Verdict with an Involved Approach to Gun Violence." And the next campaign to do for you to get involved with is the campaign to divest. And I talk about this in my post that the gun violence prevention movement and the criminalization movement can be more aligned because we have the same type of opponents: the NRA, money in politics, and political polarization. So looking outside of government to get money out of the private industries that are incarcerating our folks, as well as hurting our communities. So you'll have a sense for what we're doing, and then follow us on Twitter at Million Hoodies, and you can sign up for more information.
All right, thanks, Dante. Edna, any closing remarks?
Hi. I didn't know I was next. Okay, cool. So, yes. Ooh. So I'm just excited because in the next, I want to say, week and a half, we have our little campaign cooking. Finally, it's gonna be one of our own, like, CJA campaign, because for the past year or so we've been supporting a lot of different campaigns. Like, we're part of the Not One More Deportation campaign, the National Day Labor Organizing Network, and the lawn is leading, and we're gonna be attending or joining, just going to Washington, D.C. to kind of throw down, help out with like a large mobilization as a last push to push President Obama to do the right thing. And again, like, going back to our three demands, right? Grant migrant families and children, humanitarian asylum, stop deportations, and also expand administrative relief to undocumented immigrants. And so, like, the campaign that we'll be launching would be around the D list. More details to come, but pretty much we're going to be calling out, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of political figures, and just like Democratic leaders. They say they're good, they're progressive, they're on our side, yet they haven't taken any steps towards helping our community. So that's cooking. Y'all would see it's gonna be crazy all over social media. Hopefully, that's gonna be like our own, like, campaign, like, here in California. Um, and yeah, we're gonna be running with that until September, November, probably the end of the year, and then we still wanna revisit the conversation around different organizations that we've been working on, like the prison, like mass incarceration, and hopefully we can reach out to Dream Defenders and Million Hoodies to see how else we can collaborate and take it to the next step. We're pretty new, but we're very eager and passionate. And we really want to walk our talk, that we're talking about intersectional work, but we want to make it super intentional and get to it. So, so yeah, and then I don't have a Twitter yet. I am supposed to be getting one hopefully this week, because apparently it's the best thing. But the CJA one, I guess, if y'all would like to follow us, is at CJA, CIYJA, at CJA. A lot of good stuff coming up, and thank you all for having me here as well.
All right. Thank you, Edna. Enchanta, you're next. Just so folks know the order now. Sorry, Edna, I surprised you. The order is Enchanta, Kirin, Mateo, and Phil will close us out. Enchanta?
That is totally not the order on my side. On my side, I'm last. I just want to point that out. But BYP 100 is doing a lot. We were able to accomplish a lot in a year, but we still have a lot more to do. We've started creating chapters across the country. And we also had a big fundraising push this weekend, which was marvelous. If you're interested in learning more about BYP 100, please visit our website, byp100.org. You can also follow us on Twitter at BYP _100, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check just to make sure. Yep, BYP_100. And just to give a plug for my 9-to-5 job, Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, we also do a lot of advocacy organizing within Kentucky. We lobby, we focus on policies, we also do grassroots organizing. So if you are in the region of Kentucky, even if you're in Tennessee or Ohio, we could really use your help. We have a lot going on this year, as you probably know, and Redeem just got pushed forward by Booker and Rand Paul. So we have a lot going on around criminalization of our youth, and we could really use your help.
All right, thank you. I do want to mention that we did lose one of our panelists, Malaya Davis, due to some technical issues. Want to give a shout out to her. You can follow Malaya at him_Malaya. So that's HIM_Malaya, MALAYA. You can follow. She's an organizer with the Ohio Student Association. You can follow them at Ohio Students. Again, that's at Ohio Students. I want to thank Malaya, even in her absence. We'll try to get her on the next one, hopefully. Kirin.
Yeah, I can't believe that none of y'all have mentioned this, but there is a donate button on the Freedom Side website that y'all should go to, especially if we're going to talk about smashing nonprofit industrial complexes. We need to get some cash in the most. Cool, so that's definitely one thing. And so I work for GetEQUAL. I'm the national field coordinator. I like to say that we're a civil rights organization that focuses on the full federal equality for all queer folks. So that's all of the things that we've covered and then some. So we will be actively engaging in fighting back these religious exemptions. We've been doing this work for 4 years. We've gone really hard on it in the past 8 months, and we will be doing more of it. In the next couple of weeks, we will definitely be looking for folks to help us do a little viral campaign, the details of which will be released in the next week. If you're going to Netroots, definitely look out for that. And then also, we're active in 19 states. We're completely bottom up. I'm one of 2 staff members, and so everything is from the bottom up. And so if you are in literally any state in the continental United States, holla if you want to get down with queer liberation, because I got things for you to do.
Cool. I think it's my turn. Okay, awesome. So if you want to stop a deportation, you should do it right now. Click on the next tab and go to unitedwithdream.org. There is a place where it says take action. There are a lot of deportation cases that we are fighting right now, and all your signatures are important. So if you can sign it right now, I trust you that you're logging into that and you're clicking into that next tab, and you're going to share it with your friends and family members. We also, from the organization that I work for, Make the Road New York, our website is maketheroadny.org, or you can also find us on Facebook, Make the Road in New York. And I'm just going to leave my email if you want to talk to us. I'm also part of the Queer and Undocumented Immigrant Project. So if you want to know more information about intersectionality between the queer community and the immigrant community, let me know. My email is mateo.tabares@maketheroadny.org. So mateo.tabares@maketheroadny.org. And pardon all my moments in which I can't speak, but yeah.
No. Hey, Phil, before you start, if you can go on, thank you. So, thanks, Mateo. I want to just pause here because we didn't get a chance to talk about all the amazing Freedom Summer project that Freedom Side is proposing. Hopefully, Phil can talk a little bit about what's going to be happening in Florida in connection with that. But we are doing civic engagement programs under the theme of Our Lives Matter, Our Voices Matter, Our Votes Matter throughout this summer, and we're working specifically in the states of Texas, Ohio, Mississippi, and Florida. So I just want to give that a little bit of context as we go to Phil. Phil, can you say a little bit about what y'all's program looks like in Florida and how else folks can get plugged in with you all?
Yes. So the Dream Defenders in Florida, when we left the capital a year ago, we said that we were going back into our communities to build up our base. They didn't believe us. We needed more people. So this summer and throughout the year, we've been building in communities across Florida. And this month, if you're anywhere around Florida, if you're in Georgia, if you're in Alabama, if you're anywhere where you can get to Florida, we've got a Freedom School next week in Gainesville. And we've got a really, really big Freedom School July 21st through the 23rd. That's this month in 2 weeks in Polk County, Florida. It used to be called Imperial Polk County, Florida. It is a hotbed of racism, discrimination, segregation, and criminalization. If you are not white and male, you are a criminal in Polk County, Florida. And so we're going to host a 3-day Freedom School there, working with over 100 young people on political education, civic engagement, some cultural pieces, hoping to begin to build a strong base there, intersectional base there of young black folks, immigrant youth, immigrant organizations, young black and brown organizations, clergy, and anybody interested in true liberation for the people, not only in Polk County, but around the state of Florida. If you want to learn more about what the Dream Defenders are doing, you can go to www.dreamdefenders.org. There's a donate link on there. We're also starting a Indiegogo campaign that kicks off this Tuesday. We're raising $35,000 over the next month to go and support our efforts. On Instagram, we are at The Dream Defenders. On Twitter, we are at Dream Defenders. And really excited to be a part of the freedom side and looking forward to making this country ungovernable.
Thank you, Phil. Just to wrap us up, folks, you can follow me at, it says right here, I think, and let me see if I can get my hand right. Yeah, it says right here, at Scott Gets Busy. You can follow my organization Advancement Project at ADV_project. And of course, follow Freedom Side at Freedom Side. Please visit our website. There's a sign-up page if you want to learn more about what we're going to be doing and get involved. So far, about 300 young people of color, organizers from around the country have participated in Freedom Side convenings. We want to involve you as well if you have not. Follow us at Freedom Side. Our website's freedomside.org. Look out for the work that's going to be happening this summer. Please get involved. I want to thank one last time all of our fantastic panelists, Dante, Edna, Enchanta, Kirin, Mateo, Phil, and Malaya. I want to give a quick shout out to the bomb Calm Squad from Freedom Side who made it possible for us to do this and actually came up with the idea for this awesome web chat, especially Erica May, Jess Morales, Bex Hurwitz. Thank you all. Thank you everybody out there who tuned in, who joined us on Twitter. Continue to follow us. Continue to use the hashtag Our Lives Matter. Our lives do matter. Peace.
See y'all.
Thanks, Scott.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
We will win. Yay.
Yeah.